Russia investigation gets real. Kurdish independence crushed. And new troops for an endless war.
I want to tell you that I love you. I love you so much.
Up to 126 million Facebook users were served ads purchased and spread by Russian outfits during the 2016 election, according to testimony released ahead of tomorrow's hearing before the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Crime and Terrorism. Facebook originally estimated that just 10 million people saw the roughly 3,000 ads. A U.S. Special Operations raid captured a militant believed to have played a key role in the 2012 attack at the U.S. consulate in Benghazi that killed 4 Americans, including Ambassador Chris Stevens. In a statement, President Trump said Mustafa al-Imam, who was captured in Libya, will face justice in the United States. The trial of the accused mastermind of the attack, Ahmed Abu Khattala, began earlier this month. Farmers in western India who buried themselves to protest the government plan to buy up their land are claiming victory, for now. Nearly a month after the protest started, the Jaipur Development Authority has agreed to reassess the land's value in response to the farmers' claims that they weren't being compensated enough and that the deal would destroy the livelihoods of thousands of families. The farmers now say they'll remain at the protest site until they get written confirmation of the new agreement. The FBI is investigating the $300 million contract to rebuild Puerto Rico's power grid that was awarded to Whitefish Energy Holdings, according to the Wall Street Journal. Puerto Rico's governor canceled the contract on Sunday, calling it a distraction after questions were raised by Congress and FEMA about how the tiny energy firm was chosen for the massive project. Whitefish, which had only 2 full-time employees when the hurricane hit, is based in Montana, in the same town that's home to Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke. In a statement last week, Zinke denied any involvement. Whitefish and PREPA, the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority, have defended the deal. 70% of the island is still without power. A federal judge has blocked part of the president's attempt to change the military's transgender policy. The judge ruled that the military's policy to allow transgender service members must remain in place, while a case against the proposed changes works its way through the court. But the judge kept in place the ban on federal funds being used for gender confirmation surgery. Early this morning, the Russia investigation claimed its first victims. Former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort and his business partner Rick Gates surrendered themselves to the FBI on conspiracy and money laundering charges. In an early afternoon hearing, both men pled not guilty. But the real bombshell happened off-camera, when the Justice Department quietly unsealed charging documents for a little-known Trump policy advisor named George Papadopoulos. In March 2016, the Trump campaign recruited Papadopoulos, an energy consultant without much foreign policy experience, to be one of its unpaid foreign policy advisors. Papadopoulos immediately began making connections with a cast of Russian characters, including an unnamed professor claiming to have ties to the Kremlin. On March 21st, President Trump listed Papadopoulos to the Washington Post as one of his advisors and called him an excellent guy. And on the last day of the month, he convened a meeting of his national security team, and Papadopoulos attended. Papadopoulos began pushing for the campaign to meet with the Russian government, and began coordinating with a Russian claiming ties to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. By the end of April, Papadopoulos said he'd secured an open invitation for Trump to meet with Putin. Around the same time, one of his contacts, the professor, told him that the Kremlin had, quote, dirt on Hillary Clinton in the form of thousands of emails. On May 4th, he forwarded a message from his ministry contact to higher-ups at the Trump campaign, saying that the Kremlin was, quote, open for cooperation. We don't know if the Trump campaign took him up on his offer. What we do know is that by January of this year, the FBI had identified Papadopoulos as a person of interest in its investigation into Russian influence in the election. And in July, they arrested him for lying to them, grabbing him when he landed at Dulles Airport after a trip to Germany. Today, just as Manafort and Gates headed to court, The Justice Department revealed that back on October 5th, Papadopoulos pled guilty to making false statements, meaning that by now he's probably changed roles, from Trump advisor to informant.
The facts that came out today are a lot to process, and we still don't have much clarity on what it all means. Nothing in the Manafort and Gates indictment has an obvious connection to Russian meddling in the election, and the White House used that to try to brush aside the whole thing.
Today's announcement has nothing to do with the president, has nothing to do with the president's campaign or campaign activity. The real collusion scandal, as we've said several times before, has everything to do with the Clinton campaign, Fusion GPS, and Russia.
The problem with the pivot the White House wants to make is that we're nowhere near the end of the road for the Mueller investigation. In fact, if you read the indictments closely, they suggest a beginning rather than an ending. These indictments are, more than anything, a signal of the tactics Mueller's willing to use to get people to cooperate. The first charge in the Manafort indictment, for instance, accuses Manafort and Gates, quote, together with others, of conspiring to defraud the United States. He's obviously got more names in his back pocket, and he wants those people to know that he knows. As for Papadopoulos, the actual charge against him is noteworthy for how mundane it is. We talked to a prosecutor today who said that people lie to the FBI 100 times a day, and that the real attraction is the level of detail in the sentencing document. That gives others a glimpse into how much Mueller already knows. But listen to this on page 1. These facts do not constitute all of the facts known to the parties concerning the charged offense. That makes it clear there's a lot more. Imagine you're a former Trump campaign advisor with a guilty conscience, say the campaign supervisor or high-ranking campaign official quoted in the sentencing document, and you don't know what Mueller does and doesn't know. Why wait to find out? But for all of the options that Mueller has, it's not totally clear that there will be a payoff at the end. For starters, collusion isn't a crime per se. Mueller will have to prove that the Trump team broke specific laws. And they're probably a long way from knowing whether that's possible. That's what William Parachek, a former federal prosecutor, told me today. If you were investigating something like this, would you want to pursue all of them, or would you pick and choose which crimes that you would prosecute?
You have an investigation, you have a goal, you have a focus, and as you're pursuing that goal, certain things come to your attention and you make reasonable decisions, what a prosecutor would consider to be reasonable decisions on what to go forward with. You have a burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and that's a limiting factor.
But it's safe to say it's to get to a broader goal. Like, this is not the end game. The investigation's nowhere near done. Is that fair?
All we know is what we see from the papers, but it would seem to me that it's unlikely that that's the end, that they're going to close up shop and say we're done.
So could we come to a point where we don't have an answer to whether there was collusion?
I think that the point of the investigation is to determine whether any crimes were committed. And it is a puzzle, but no one knows what the puzzle is going to look like when it's all put together.
The soldier killed in a helicopter crash in eastern Afghanistan over the weekend has been identified as 36-year-old Chief Warrant Officer Jacob Sims of Oklahoma. He's the 12th U.S. service member to die in Afghanistan this year, and brings the number of American military personnel killed since the war began 16 years ago to 2,400.
Foreign Relations Committee will come to order, and I want...
Late this afternoon, Defense Secretary James Mattis and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson went to Capitol Hill to ask for an extension of the AUMF, the authorization for use of military force. That's the law that allows the U.S. to continue its wars against those responsible for the 9/11 attacks. As the Afghanistan war heads into its 17th year, the Trump administration has already announced that 4,000 more U.S. troops will deploy to Afghanistan this fall.
There we go.
Vice News joined the 3rd Infantry Division of Fort Stewart, Georgia, as they prepared for a 9-month deployment.
I said skip, watch the pedal.
So we'll be heading off to Afghanistan in actually about close to 48 hours.
right, hey, we're gonna go get started. Hey, bring it in. Day after tomorrow starts our legacy, right? Our contribution. Don't go out tonight and tie one on that you're gonna regret. Invest in what's important, right? Invest in your family.
It's bittersweet. I'll be leaving my family behind, but I know they'll be in good spirits. I actually thought that I would be deploying a lot sooner in my military career. We've been in Afghanistan for many, many years now. And so now we have a new generation of troops or service members that have to really have some tough decisions, and they're getting younger and younger. So I'm one of the first in the family to join the Army. I'm one of the first to graduate from college. You gotta pack it right, you gotta pack it tight. This is full body armor right here. It's got plates on the side and back and on the sides, and I've got some more that I've gotta add on. My wife makes me pack extra socks just to, if I wanna double up on the socks, and extra towels, extra everything. We've been married for about 3.5 years now, so still relatively young. It's kind of tough on her, you know? Kind of tough on her. This is literally packing up and not coming back for months at a time, or you never know, maybe not coming back alive, you know? That's reality, right? We've got to plan for that.
If it happens or if something bad happens, it's all in this packet, you know, but I asked him and he said it's up to me. And if in the event that happens, I would want him to go wherever I go. So, you know, I try not to think about it a lot because I know that he'll be back. So
I want to make it easy as possible for my family if something were to happen. They've already got to deal with a significant emotional event if something were to truly happen to me. I think it's good to just think through it, talk through it, have that tough discussion. If anything ever happens to me, take care of our seeds. I love you.
I think one good thing is they joined it knowing that Afghanistan was going on. Unlike me joining the Army 20 years ago, we joined in a period of peace, and we were always prepared for something, but it was a period of peace. All of these soldiers know we're in Iraq, they know we're in Afghanistan, and they still have the courage to join. We're gonna do whatever mission the Army gives us. All the political fray and all that stuff, as a soldier, we just have an oath to obey the orders of the President of the United States, and that's where we go, so.
So during 9/11, I was in junior high, and they took us all together into just a few classrooms. And we all watched those towers go down. So when you think about it, it's just a chilling moment, you know, many, many years later to still be combating things like this, you know? So there's approximately 468, I believe, trees here, and they're all with respect to all the soldiers that lost their lives in Afghanistan and in Iraq. I've got a few on my team that are 19, 20 years old, fairly young. So it's really going to put a lot of pressure on me to make sure they get back to their families. At the same time as, you know, me looking out for. So I'll wake up tomorrow, sit down and have breakfast with my wife, and just kind of be under each other. Talk about the good times, not talk about how sad we're gonna be to be away from each other. Really talk about some good times, review some old videos, maybe from our wedding, maybe from when we first got together, and really reminisce about some of the good times so we leave on a really good note. And then we'll show up, drop our bags, pick up our weapons, have a ceremony, get on buses, and head down to the ADAG and fly out.
I want to tell you that I love you. Love you so much.
I love you too. I won't have anybody to put my cold feet on. What am I gonna do?
You're gonna have to get a pillow for your feet.
But the pillow is warm.
Put some socks on.
right, ladies and gentlemen, it's about that time. The soldiers in front of you represent some of the best logisticians in the Army. We are ready to assume this mission. Brigade, attention. Right, face. File from the left, forward. March. Forward.
I know we'll do well. We're gonna bring back our folks alive. See y'all in 9 months.
Last night, after Kurdish President Masoud Barzani announced he's stepping down on November 1st, hundreds of his supporters, some armed with guns, gathered outside of Parliament. Millions of Kurds voted for independence last month, but Iraqi forces have since taken back large sections of territory in the oil-rich region. Hind Hassan reports from the Kurdish capital Erbil on the political crisis facing the region.
Masoud Barzani's presidential rule may be coming to an end, but his loyalists are going nowhere. 1 month ago, many Iraqi Kurds thought that for the first time in their history, they were on the cusp of forming a new nation state. But now that dream has all but faded. Barzani's decision to push on with the referendum turned out to be his undoing. The international community, including the United States, tried to talk him out of it, and the central government made it clear that it considered the vote to be illegal. It saw the move as a play by Barzani to consolidate his control of the oil fields in the disputed territories, which Baghdad wanted for itself. But Barzani didn't listen to those warnings. The president's miscalculation led to the Iraqi government launching a military offensive, taking back control of the city of Kirkuk, the oil fields around it, and also other territory that the Kurds had taken over during the battle against the Islamic State group, which began in 2014. Within weeks, the balance of power in the north of Iraq shifted, and the Kurdish people went from being overjoyed to deeply resentful. Many Kurds believe that the working government, which is Barzani's KDP party and the PUK party, gave in too easily to the Arab onslaught. In the end, the Iraqi government and Barzani's political opponents wanted him out, and he had no choice but to step down.
رفراندومیان کردوه به بهانه که انفال کراین کیمیا باران کراین کومال کش کراین.
Barzani's powers will be redistributed between the Prime Minister Nuchirvan Barzani, who also happens to be his nephew, Parliament and the judiciary. Now the Kurdish regional government is facing a political crisis, and without its president, control of the disputed territories and its oil fields, negotiating an independent state is no longer an option.
Hi, my name's Rostam.
Don't listen to me, I only believe myself. So I'm going somewhere to do that alone.
I want all of my songs to kind of live in the in-between space between a happy song and a sad song. So I think Guan has aspects of both. So the song started with the string parts. I wrote the string parts first, and then I added the chord changes underneath to give some kind of structure to the song. There's a bass line on the second verse of the song that I wrote with my Beatles bass. It was popularized by the Beatles, but it's made by a company called Hofner. So in this case, it's a bass line that's kind of like crawling up and down the pentatonic scale. So the Kate Bush drum beat, it's a kick and then two floor toms and then the snare alternating. So think it has this kind of tumbling quality, and that's what I wanted to capture.
All of these dreams keep coming back to me slowly, slowly.
I try to do it haphazardly because I like the way a piano sounds when you hear it in a room as opposed to the way it sounds in a studio, which to me is too clinical. And then I like to use some effects to make the piano sound older. There is an old folk song that comes from Wales called Suogan, where I went to school had a folk tradition. I guess I just had this catalog in my mind of old melodies that I had really strong feelings about. I wanted to use them. That whole string break is a dream, and the lyrics returning signify coming out of that dream. So what I wanted was to kind of pull you out of it as if you were waking up.
When I woke up from that dream, I was sleeping.
I just sat at a piano and I was kind of like shouting gibberish over these chords, and I recorded it and I put it at the end of the song. And I got in my car and I listened to this version of the song with real lyrics for every section until the end where it was gibberish lyrics, and I was like, yeah, that works.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
That's Vice News Tonight for Monday, October 30th.